Welcome to Shared Lunch, brought to you by Sharesies. I'm Sonia, one of the co-founders and co-CEOs at Sharesies, and we're on a mission to create financial empowerment for everyone. Before we get started, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land, water and sky of which we come to you from today, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. Also, here's some important information.
Investing involves risk. You might lose the money you start with. We recommend talking to a licensed financial advisor. We also recommend reading product disclosure documents before deciding to invest. Everything you're about to see and hear is current at the time of recording.
We often hear about mergers and acquisitions. Well, it's also possible to have a demerger. This is when a company decides to split into two companies. And that's what we're chatting about today by hearing about what's been going on with the online travel company Webjet. Started in 1998, Webjet is a well-known global travel company and a place that many Kiwis and Australians go to book travel and experiences, and accounts for almost 8% of all travel booked. Last week, shareholders voted and approved that the demerger of Webjet into two separate ASX-listed entities, Web Travel Group, which is the B2B side of the business, and Webjet Group, which is the B2C side of the business. Joining me to help understand what this means for consumer travel, the new CEO of Webjet Group, Katrina Barry. Welcome, Katrina.
Hi, Sonia. Lovely to be here.
Yeah, thanks heaps for having us. It's been a huge week, hasn't it?
I sound like I've had a really big night out. I've I feel like I've been talking to investors and brokers for about the last 4 weeks solid. And on Monday, we rang the bell with Webjet Group, WJL, now officially listed on the ASX. So that was quite a party. And so it's been a full-on busy week. It's been a good time.
Yeah, amazing. And we will get into the Webjet, what's been going on, because obviously there's been, a lot to talk about. But first, let's give a bit of an intro to you and welcome, so people get a sense of who we're talking to. You've got a pretty impressive background. Fast Tech 50, female leader, numerous director and CEO titles held in some pretty iconic brands. Can you tell us a bit about your background and what led you to the travel industry?
At the end of the day, I'm just a Kiwi farm girl who grew up in Papakura, just outside of Auckland, and went to Auckland University, and then I moved to Australia for my first job in McKinsey doing strategy consulting. So I spent about 7 or 8 years doing that, and then my first real job, is what we call it, was working with the Virgin Group. But I think, and that's where I kind of fell in love with the travel industry. I wasn't working specifically for Virgin Blue, as it was called back then, but you get a lot of exposed to it when I was working at Virgin Money, Virgin Management, and started a gym chain called Virgin Active. But I think what drew me into the travel industry was, when I was at university, I went on this trip, and it was pretty much my first overseas trip. I went to a student conference in India. And so, sort of travelled around there, and which is, India, for anyone who hasn't been, is an assault on every sense in the best possible way. It is colourful, it is confronting, the food is fabulous, and, for me, it was a complete adventure. And something I never thought I would ever do, sort of, spending my time at Papakura High School. I was just hoping to get to the big smoke being Auckland CBD. So that's what drew me to travel. And my first real leadership role in travel, I was working at a bank, and I had a recruiter call me and said, I had just left the Virgin Group about 1.5 years earlier, and they had said, look, I've got the perfect role for you. You wanted, an MD CEO role. You wanted to cover Australia, New Zealand and Asia, because I'd missed running Asia after I left Virgin. I'm like, sounds perfect. What is it? And she said, Kentucky. And I was like, sorry? Like, isn't Kentucky just a booze bus for bogans? And in the end, I met with the chair, and he was like, you're right, 20 years ago, 25 years ago it was, and that's why we want you to come on board. You've got experience taking iconic brands and transforming them. And that was my first full-time role in the travel industry, and I've been in it ever since. That's sort of 12 years ago now, so good times.
So you were on the board of Webjet, for a few years before this, so you know the business pretty well. What's been your experience like 2 weeks into the CEO role of the B2C side?
This is a stellar business. It's the original online travel agency for Australia and New Zealand. And, as you said, formed 26 years ago. And, since that time, it took about 10 years for it to become number one, and it's maintained that position ever since. And it's I would say, a leader, a forethinker in how we buy, e-commerce. So, one of the things, though, that this business, prior to demerger, it was, $3.2 billion business. And, that becomes a lot. And we had almost become two different divisions. We had two different sets of customers. B2B was, travel intermediaries, people who were selling travel. And that's very much what our Webjet business served. And then the original business, Webjet Group, which is the way to buy travel online in Australia and New Zealand. The reality is, when you get that big, as a board member, you unapologetically spend your dollars and your time on the business that's growing the fastest. You always back your growth. And now the Webjet Group has a very enviable growth target, don't you? Growth profile. But, it was less than sort of 35%, which is what our other business was growing at. So the reason why, as a board, we started to talk about the demerger was we found ourselves as a board speaking less and less about the iconic Webjet Group, the original business, even though that was the cash cow of the group. And if we were honest, we'd probably, not focused on it enough in the last 5 to 6 years. There was a bit going on. We had a pandemic, and then they had to manage through that. And then there was revenge travel. But as a board, we thought it was the most appropriate thing to drive shareholder value, but also to drive the growth agendas of both companies, was to split it up and allow both to focus on the unique strategic agendas. We're extremely well cash preserved, if you will. We have no debt, about $90 million free cash, and that gives us an incredible opportunity now to focus on our unique organic and potentially inorganic growth agenda. So that's what we're looking forward to doing. So it's been a whirlwind, I guess, to your question of what's it been like. I officially, stepped down from the board about 3 months ago to step into an executive role. And I think we've just delivered the fastest demerger in Australian corporate history. There's no prize for it, but other than a hoarse throat. But I think it's just been really exciting. The team is incredibly energized now that we have our own balance sheet. We have a dedicated board, dedicated, management team now, dedicated balance sheet, no debt, and all the opportunity in the world.
So let's get into the opportunities that you see now that the B2C side is stepping into, I guess, its own spotlight and its own chance to kind of grow and assert itself from here. So can you tell us a bit around how you see those opportunities? What is the B2C strategy from here for Webjet?
Well, there's a couple of key areas that we think are under-leveraged and we want to focus on as a team. The first one is probably, it's the first thing you do when you come into a company is you check your brand health. What is the health of the Webjet brand, etc. It's incredibly famous. It has really high awareness. But consideration is probably something we need to work on. So the first thing we're doing as a team is a bit of a brand refresh or a glow up, as our younger listeners would know it. So it's not a rebrand, but it's an opportunity for us to take the brand, freshen it up, make it a bit more relevant and a bit more contemporary. So that's your first piece. From there, that'll set us in a good position to really invest in our marketing and I think leverage our 6 million customers. So we have 6 million customers across Australia and New Zealand who are either logged in members of our websites and our travel marketplaces. We have 3 of them, being webjet.com.au or webjet.co.nz, and then airportrentals.com and Motorhome Republic. The last two, obviously, hopefully what it says on the car, says on the door, one's car rentals and one's motorhome rentals. So each of those 3 marketplaces are leaders in their space, and we have 6 million customers sitting across those. And I think we've got an opportunity to drive more loyalty and drive more repeat rate from those customers by focusing on our member journey and our member experience. So that's a key focus for us in terms of developing out that member experience. And what I mean by that is, we did our first piece of it. And there's plenty of e-commerce examples who do this way better than us. So this is not a hard stretch for us to really grab growth out of this lever. We did our first ever promotion about 3 weeks ago to Bali. And it was, if you're a Webjet member, you got access to that deal for the first 24 hours first. Now, everybody knows in a travel deal, you want to jump on that thing because that's where all the good flights go first. So we did that and gave that to members as an exclusive offer to them for 24 hours. It went really well. Why? Because people love being treated special, and they love deals, and they love getting early access to something. So we think, there's an entire extension you can take from that. That was just, we've got the functionality. I've got my profile in there, my kids, my husband's, all our frequent flyers. So it's really easy for me to book my flight, my hotel, and have it all in one place. So that's functionality already exists. Now what we want to do is offer value to our members, and doesn't have to be revenue dilutionary. It's like, here's an exclusive offer for you. Also, it's working with airlines going, okay, you've got some distressed inventory, May's not looking good for next year, but you don't have enough to go out and do an above the line campaign. Work with us. We've got a closed user group, being 6 million people we can talk to and go, we can push this product for you. So there's some really good examples there. So that drives what lever I call the repeat. The next piece is, what am I buying? There's an entire travel wallet that each of us has when we think about going on a trip. I've got to get my flights, and then how am I going to get around? Am I going to take a tour? Am I going to hire a car? Or am I going to hire a motorhome? I'm going to need somewhere to stay. I need some hotels. And, being safe is cool. So I'm going to need travel insurance as well. So these are the elements. If you look at our revenue, 70% of it comes from flight-related activity, and 30% comes from us receiving a commission from selling the hotel, or selling the car, or selling the travel insurance, for example. So the next key lever or opportunity for this business is to focus on capturing that whole travel wallet and attaching what we call these ancillary products. So most people know us for flights and probably domestic. So it's coming to us and they're going, okay, you've got your flight, and most people don't know. Here's 2 fun facts for every darling listener. You can burn your Amex points on Webjet. Most people are like, in business, they're like, did not know that. The second piece is you can get 20% off your hotel if you book your flight. Really good bargain. But the key thing about that is most people don't know, if I attach all these the extras for my holiday, I can bundle and save, if you will. So that's the kind of the third key thing we're focused on. The last is international. Now if you think about what's happening in the international space right now, air flight prices are dropping. Yay for all of us. And that is because demand and supply, the capacity we haven't fully reached outbound capacity, and by that I mean flights out of Australia and New Zealand, the level that we had pre-COVID. We're still only at 80-90%. Most airlines now are finalising bringing back fleet, etc., and focus more on a capacity game than a yield game. At the same time as we've got new airlines coming to Australia and New Zealand who have never flown here before. Here's a fun fact: Turkish Airlines, 3rd largest airline in the world. I never knew that until about 2 months ago. And they have just confirmed they're going to be starting to fly out of Australia this year. So that is bringing more capacity into the market. What does that mean? Prices begin to drop. So we've got a real key opportunity right now to sell more international flights. Now, as I said before, most people who know Webjet, it's like, how we started was selling point to point around Australia and New Zealand and between the 2 countries. But now we are significantly growing our share of international outbound. Now, here's the trick about international outbound. Us Aussies and Kiwis, we like to travel, and we don't do simple point to point. Americans and Europeans, they go, I'm going to fly from New York to London, back again. Or I'm going to go from Rome, from Rome to LA and back again. They do point-to-point travel. Now that's really easy to solve with technology, and that's why technology, sort of boomed across the last 15 years for actually buying travel online. However, for international, for Aussies and Kiwis, we don't do that. We do multi-stop trips. stop off in Singapore, I might hang out there for a couple of days, up to Dubai, go to the racetrack, into London. Oh, got to pop across to France to see Auntie Cecile. Then I want to go down to Italy because that's where I want to have my Aperol. Greece, need a bit of sunshine, and I'll go home via LA to see my friend there or to take the kids to Disneyland. So we really move around. That's called a multi-stop trip. Now we have a really unique competitive advantage in this, using AI and a piece of technology that we have bought and integrated that now means we have a real shot at disrupting the industry again and becoming the way that you can book international. So traditionally you would have to go to what we call a bricks and mortar travel agency, or your travel agency store at the local shopping centre. You walk in there and you sit down, and a good travel agent can put together that multi-stop trip for you across a couple of hours. I know my sister-in-law is a travel agent, and that's what I've been making her do for years. But with Webjet and now how we're using AI, you can do that from your couch by yourself in 5 minutes. So given the trends that are happening in the international market, given the continuing on acceleration to online purchasing for every category, particularly travel, and now the technology is at a place and we have a distinct competitive advantage with an AI tech that we have implemented, we've got a really good shot at starting to win in international share. So those are the 3 things that we're focused on, and the first one being fix the brand, fix the repeat, attach more, capture more of the travel wallet, and then grow our international share.
Thanks for that overview. Who are your main competitors?
People compare us to Expedia and Booking.com in terms of the online world, but they started out life as hotels, so most people go to them for hotels, and selling flights is a lot harder. And then people also compare us to, I think, major travel agencies like Flight Centre.
Cool. And then it's great to have the plans and the strategies of what you're going to seize and achieve. But how do you consider, what are the big risks that you're managing? Like, what are the things that can get in the way of that plan?
Well, I mean, the number one risk we always talk about now is a pandemic or something that's a true disruptor to the industry. As in the industry, we're all burnt by that. So that is always top of mind. And I think the other sort of the key pieces, sort of fall off the back of that. Global events. Obviously, things slowed down in Eastern Europe, given global events over there. You've obviously got cost of living crisis. This is softening a little bit domestic demand and travelling around Australia and between New Zealand and Australia. That's starting to soften that a little bit, but international is still growing strong. So I think macroeconomic conditions are probably the key risk to the business we see.
And how do you think about sustainability? How does that wrap into your thinking as a travel company?
Yeah, I mean, it's really important to our customers, and therefore it's really important to us. So we were the first online travel agency to introduce carbon offset. So with each interaction you have with us, you have the opportunity to offset the carbon produced by the flight. And we obviously do our sustainability report on an annual basis. A key thing for us on that is dealing with lots of different suppliers. We deal with suppliers from hotels and from airlines and from car rental companies, and also checking through their credentials, but also checking through our modern slavery. I think it's a really important thing in terms of being a good corporate citizen, is making sure you're checking through all your suppliers as well to make sure that you're working with I think great corporate citizens.
Yeah, great. And we have we've talked about Aperol spritz and revenge travel, and as well, you did touch on it, the cost of living crisis. How is that playing out in the demand for travel with the cost of living crisis at the moment?
Yeah, well, it's a really interesting trend. And I think Jerry Harvey said it the best in the Financial Review the other week. He said people are prioritising travel over buying their next couch or their fridge. Funny thing is, travel pre-COVID, I think, most people think about a discretionary item. Post-COVID, people are thinking about it like a non-discretionary item. People are giving up other things to travel. And that's what we're hearing from our customers. People are looking for bargains, though. So one of the great pieces of tech that we have is on webjet.com.au and .co.nz is our mix and match matrix. What this allows you to do is to fly one way with an airline and fly back with another. And people love that because it allows you to get on one ticket. You don't have to go to 17 different sites and figure out what is the cheapest. It's all compared for you on our site, and you can pick the best timings for you and the best pricing. And that allows people to mix and match and save. So how it's playing out in terms of the cost of living is, I think people are still prioritising travel. They're particularly prioritising international travel. You may do one less trip domestic, but when you are traveling, you're looking for bargains. You're looking for how I can be really efficient with my money, because it's shifted, like hybrid working. You know, no matter how many big CEOs tell us we're all coming back into the office, my personal view is the world has moved on. And I think that, you know, there's been a cultural shift in that. And I think there's been a cultural shift in the way people think about travel as well. So they are prioritising that against other expenditure. And that is absolutely what we're hearing from our customers. They're still looking for bargains, but they're still going.
And how about with the ability to buy across so many different suppliers, how do you maintain, I guess, the trustworthiness and as well the cost elements for your customers?
Yeah, well, most people in the travel industry will have preferred relationships where they will push a provider or not. Webjet has always been agnostic. We are airline agnostic, we're supplier agnostic. And we think that's an important part of our value proposition to customers. And I think why we're still number one. You know, there's plenty of tried and come and fail, but we have still maintained our number one position as, you know, as the way to buy travel online because of that ability to make sure we present all the options with no preference. So that's a different economic model, and you take risk with that. But what we have found is by delivering to customers the ultimate choice and the ultimate convenience, that we've been rewarded well with their loyalty.
Yeah, and so trends-wise, you've talked about supply increasing, which could potentially bring prices down. Is that what we're hearing?
That's correct. International prices are coming down. So that's one of the key trends, is international starting to become more affordable again. Other key trends I'd say is that, you know, people are unbundling their travel, just like airlines have unbundled the seat. So now you have to buy the seat, the bag, the meal. People are, you know, unbundling their trips, going, I'll fly up one airline, fly back on another to save money. And the other key trends, I think, people don't think about one holiday every 2-3 years now. They think about their annual holiday, a domestic one and an international one. You know, if they're fortunate enough to start thinking about that, really people are building it into their lifestyles. So we're seeing the booking window, which means when you book as opposed to your travel, that used to be quite short, you know, like 2 to 3 months. Now the booking window is growing. People are starting to plan their time and their holidays better.
That's super interesting. So now let's flip to some questions for people, you know, who may be looking to invest in the Webjet group or people who are investing. You mentioned in another media interview that I saw that people like dividends may be part of the future.
Yeah, we're really excited about returning to dividends. It's been a request from our, when we were a broader group, shareholders for a long time, but we've obviously been investing that money. But given we are, very consumer focused e-commerce business, and we'll be trading around that ASX 300 level, we look forward to delivering dividends to our investors, probably in FY26. We are in our new group, so we have a separate tax identity, so we need to build up some franking credit first, but we'll be able to give more updates about that at our full year results next May.
Yeah, great. And so you're about to go into a period of blackout. Do you just want to explain that to our investors and what they can expect through that period?
We have a different financial year. Ours is from 1st April to end of March. So our first half results come out in November. So we go into a period where I won't be able to talk to you, Sonia, and give you any information. And we'll stop communicating with the market whilst we prepare the half results.
Thanks for that. And hopefully the voice gets a chance to recover.
Yes, indeed. That's probably why I need blackout. Like, we've been inundated with requests to speak and to share the story and to share our growth plans.
Is there anything else in the future trend space that you want to discuss before you can't anymore for a few weeks?
The other way we're using AI is within the business to make it more efficient. So, for example, we're using AI to summarize up our case notes for when a person calls up and wants to inquire about changes or anything like that. We use AI to summarize it, so when you call back next time, you don't have to restate your whole story again, which we all know is just a big pain. So, that means that the time to resolution is much quicker for a customer, and our average, handle time is quicker as well. So we're using AI for efficiency. Another key trend is servicing. Obviously, we have 24/7 servicing, so you can call us at any time, and we'll help you out wherever you are in the world. But increasingly, we're using WhatsApp, every social form of communication to communicate with customers, because turns out Generation Y and Z don't really want to talk to us. We're not taking it personally. They just want to communicate via messaging. So, that's a big trend we're seeing in terms of servicing as well.
So just before we wrap up, is there any travel hacks?
Book early and plan. Like, the pricing right now for next year is really, for going overseas, is phenomenal. It's the first time we've seen such sharp pricing in 4 years. So book that. And my last travel hack, this is my favorite, is make sure you always have 2 sets of toiletries. I have 1 set in Melbourne where I go to work. I have 1 set of toiletries in my suitcase for when I'm traveling, and I never pack it. It's always just there, ready to go. Saves so much time.
Yeah, great. Well, thanks heaps for joining us today, Katrina, and letting us peek under the hood a bit around what's been going on with Webjet and how you see the future and how that might evolve. So for everyone else, thanks for joining us, and thanks for tuning in. You can watch Shared Lunch on YouTube or on your favourite podcast app. Leave us a rating and comment about what you'd like to hear around next. So thanks again, Katrina, for joining us, and all the best.
You're so welcome. Thank you.